You'd assume a mall makes its money the obvious way: it owns the building, it rents out the stores, tenants pay, the owner profits. Simple landlord math. Except walk into almost any mall in the world and you'll notice something odd. The store taking up the most space, the department store anchoring the whole wing, is very often paying some of the lowest rent per square foot in the entire building. The tiny phone case kiosk near the food court might be paying more per square foot than a 200,000 square foot department store next to it. That's not a rounding error. That's the actual business model, and once you understand why, the whole industry starts to look different. Anchor tenants, the Macy's, the Nordstrom, the big grocery chain, typically sign leases running 10 to 25 years, often at rates well below what smaller stores pay for equivalent space. Landlords accept this because the anchor isn't really being rented for its own sake. It's being rented for what it does to everyone else's foot traffic. A large, recognizable store gives shoppers a reason to drive to that specific mall instead of a competitor's. Once they're inside, they pass dozens of smaller shops on the way to and from the anchor. Those smaller inline tenants are the ones who actually subsidize the property, often paying 2, 3, sometimes far more per square foot than the anchor beside them. The anchor isn't the paying customer in this relationship. It's the bait. The inline tenants are the ones footing the bill for that bait to exist. That already flips the common assumption, but it gets stranger. Mall owners don't just collect a flat lease payment from most tenants. Many leases include what's called percentage rent, a base rent plus a cut of the tenant's actual sales once they cross a certain threshold. So if a clothing store has a great December, the landlord's income for that month quietly goes up too, without renegotiating anything. On top of that, tenants typically pay their share of common area maintenance costs, cleaning, security, utilities, marketing, billed back to them regardless of how much traffic the mall is actually producing. This is why occupancy rate, the number malls love to advertise, can be misleading. A mall can report 90% occupancy and still be losing money, because occupancy doesn't tell you what those tenants are actually paying, or whether their sales, and therefore the landlord's percentage cut, are climbing or quietly collapsing. Here's the part that reframes everything else: a large modern mall usually isn't owned outright by whoever's name is on the sign. It's financed through commercial mortgage-backed securities, large loans bundled together and sold to investors, essentially betting on the future income the property will generate. That means the mall's real product, from a financial standpoint, isn't retail space at all. It's a projected stream of rent payments, packaged and sold as debt. The stores are the visible layer. The invisible layer is a leveraged financial structure sitting underneath the whole building, and that structure only works if the projected income keeps flowing in roughly the shape the loan assumed it would. Which is exactly where the fragility shows up. Most inline leases include a co-tenancy clause, a protection that lets a smaller tenant pay reduced rent, or walk away entirely, if occupancy drops below an agreed threshold, especially if an anchor leaves. So picture the sequence. An anchor closes. That single closure doesn't just remove one tenant's rent, small as it already was. It triggers co-tenancy clauses across dozens of other leases at once. Smaller tenants start paying less, or leaving outright, because the traffic that justified their higher rent is gone. Net operating income falls. If the fall is sharp enough, the property can no longer generate the cash flow the mortgage was underwritten against. The owner, who may have little personal capital actually at risk beyond the equity already sunk in, can find it cheaper to default and hand the building back to lenders than to keep funding the shortfall. One vacancy becomes a debt crisis. This isn't theoretical. In downtown San Francisco, the Westfield San Francisco Center generated roughly $455 million in sales in 2019. By 2022, that had fallen to under $300 million, and annual foot traffic had dropped from nearly 10 million visits to around 5.5 million. In 2023, Nordstrom, the mall's flagship anchor for 35 years, announced it was leaving, citing the collapse of downtown foot traffic. Within about a month, more than 300,000 square feet across 5 floors sat empty. Other tenants followed, some citing declining safety in the surrounding area. Westfield and its partner Brookfield, the mall's operators, chose to walk away from the property entirely rather than keep covering the gap, defaulting on a mortgage reported at somewhere between $558 and $625 million. lenders eventually foreclosed. By 2026, the mall had closed its doors for good, with reuse proposals ranging from housing to a stadium still being debated. One anchor's departure didn't just lose a tenant. It unraveled a financing structure that had been built on the assumption that anchor would still be there. Not every mall ends this way, and that's worth being precise about. Plenty of owners saw this fragility coming and adapted before it became fatal, replacing struggling department stores with movie theaters, gyms, medical offices, or grocery chains that draw repeat weekly visits rather than seasonal ones, diversifying so no single tenant's exit can trigger a chain reaction. Others converted dead anchor boxes into apartments or logistics space entirely. The realistic best case is a mall that diversifies its anchors enough that no single closure is catastrophic. The realistic worst case is what happened in San Francisco, a single high-profile departure cascading through co-tenancy clauses into a financial collapse the owner would rather abandon than absorb. So the honest answer to how malls still make money is that, for a shrinking number of them, they don't. Not reliably, not anymore. The ones that survive have quietly stopped being simple landlords collecting rent from stores. They're operators managing a fragile, leveraged bet that human beings will keep showing up in person, spread across enough different reasons to show up that no single closure can knock the whole structure over. The stores you walk past are the visible economy. The real one is a financing structure that only works as long as people keep walking,